Hey, what's going on, everyone? June here with Hapa英会話, and joining me today is Kara.
Hi, thank you so much for having me on, June. I'm so excited to talk about different English sounds.
Yes, and that's exactly why I have you here today, is because you are the pronunciation specialist, as I know. Kara, can you quickly introduce yourself, what you do, and the kind of stuff that you do on a day-to-day basis?
Of course. So my name is Kara Penny. I am a speech language pathologist. It's a fancy way of saying I help people speak more clearly. Currently, I work in public schools in America. I live in New Jersey, but I will soon be living in Japan to teach English full-time. I have my master's degree in speech language pathology, and what I do all day is pronunciation and language teaching to my English-speaking students at school.
Interesting. And I think, some of the people who are studying English might be thinking, wait, American people need help with pronunciation? Because you are helping native speakers, American people, with pronunciation. Is that correct?
Completely. So many of our sounds, especially sounds that my Japanese students struggle so much with, as native English speakers, we don't get those sounds into our lexicon until like 7 or 8 years old sometimes. So if you're frustrated, American children who only speak English also are having the same problems. These are not easy sounds.
So today, let's start with the L and R sounds. This is probably one of the most common sounds/pronunciations that I get asked. And I try to do my best to explain the difference. I don't think I'm very good at it. So I'm going to have you explain how to properly and clearly pronounce the L and R sound. So let's start with the L sound. What are some tips and tricks that you can show us with these sounds?
Of course. You might see me doing this a lot during the video. This is letter L. Basically, letter L is the most difficult sound for Japanese speakers because you don't have it in Japanese. It doesn't exist. So that's why this sound is so hard. You didn't grow up saying this sound. You didn't grow up hearing this sound. But just because it's difficult doesn't mean you can't do it. Mm-hmm. So let's talk. I want you to take your tongue, and I want you to put the tip right behind your top front teeth. Mm-hmm. Never let it escape your mouth. I don't want to see any pink of your tongue. No way. Always behind your front teeth. This one, L, L, L. And make sure when you're practicing at home, make sure it's not ow, ow. That is going to immediately tell a native English speaker that this is your second language. No matter if it's the first, middle, or last sound, L is always made the same way. Push your tongue forward.
Quick question here. Is my tongue supposed to be touching the roof of my mouth, or is it just the front of my teeth? How close should my tongue be to the top of my mouth?
Amazing. It's different for every speaker, and it's a preference. I always say to go for your teeth. I also have giant teeth, so it's pretty easy for me to hit them. If the roof of your mouth makes more sense, that's fine, as long as it's clear. I need your tongue to go forward, and if it goes forward and up, that's okay. And if it goes forward and straight, all the same. It's all good. If you're having trouble with this sound, something I do, especially for my younger students, take a little peanut butter, take a little jelly, something, rub it against your teeth. This is going to remind your tongue to go forward every time.
Interesting. So put a little bit of peanut butter or jelly or whatever you have at home that sticks onto the back of your tooth so that it serves as a reminder for you to touch that peanut butter or jelly, and it will help you make that L sound.
Completely. And one last thing about the L that I see a lot of English and Japanese students struggle with, your tongue has to be pointed.
Oh, pointed.
If it's relaxed and like a U, L, L, L. You hear how different that sounds? Not clear. L. Make sure you kind of point it just a little bit.
Yeah, it sounds a little sloppy when you have your tongue flat. You want to make sure it's nice and pointed.
Completely.
Yeah.
It's a little change that makes such a big difference.
So like, let's say, for example, let's take the word light, for example. So a light that turns on, you have a signal light. So in this case, you bring your tongue forward. You want to make sure it's touching the back of your tooth and like a light.
Exactly.
Light. Yeah.
Another thing too, make the sound a little longer. It's okay. Yes, I hear a lot of people try to speak very quickly because conversation moves very quickly. When you're practicing at home by yourself, L, draw it out and make sure it's correct. Make sure I'm not hearing ow, ew, no. Always remind yourself, forward, pointed, back of your front teeth.
How about the R sound?
R is the most difficult sound in the English language, no matter if you are a native or a foreign speaker. I hear R's all day long. So let me talk about it. There are two ways you can make R. Neither one is correct. It's more what's comfortable for you. I want to show you both because one might make more sense or feel better to you. So let's talk about these. One is called the bunched. I want your tongue back and up. So L went forward, R is going back. I want the sides of your tongue to kind of curl up.
Yeah.
There you go. Remember, I don't care if R is the first, middle, or last sound, your tongue is going back. And it should feel kind of tight. It should almost feel like pressure.
Yeah, that's what I'm feeling right now. It feels like a workout to like my throat area. It's actually pretty difficult even for me to bring it back and up. I feel like I'm really getting a workout in my mouth area right now.
Yes, that is why R is so hard.
Yeah.
Remember, this is my 3 letters to help you.
Okay.
BBT.
BBT. Okay.
Back.
Mm-hmm.
Bunched.
Uh-huh.
Tight. We want a tight tongue to get that really strong R.
So back, bunched, tight. And for people who are watching this video, what does it mean for your tongue or your mouth to be bunched? What do you exactly mean by that?
I just mean put your entire tongue in the back. I'll show you. My tongue can't see anything in the front because it's not there. It is all the way in the back here.
All the way in the back. So you want to bring your tongue as far back as you possibly can. That's what you're trying to do.
And keep practicing that way. That's going to help your brain remember it.
Let's practice with the word here. So we did light with an L. Let's do right, like left and right this time. So right. So again, we'll do a little bit of an exaggeration here.
Draw it out, make it longer.
Right.
Yeah.
Something like that. Yeah.
And notice your lips. Right. My lips are almost stretching back, kind of like a smile. I'm not. No duck face here. Right. Almost like you're smiling a little bit.
Opening up a little bit. Okay. So you want to really get that mouth stretching out.
Don't exaggerate it. You're not the Joker. I don't need a full set of teeth. Right. Just a little back.
Just a little bit out. Yeah. Okay. Perfect. All right.
The other R I want to mention really quickly. It's the same thing. This one is called retroflexed. Again, the name means nothing to you, but let me tell you. This one, the front of your tongue, the tip of your tongue, curls up just a little. Right. I've heard from some beginners that this is an easier sound for them to practice because they can feel the front of their tongue move back as well. So again, it is personal preference. They don't sound any different. I'll say them. Right. There's not much difference. And I was doing both positions. So really, it's whatever you feel most comfortable with and what you feel helps you sound most clear.
Gotcha. But I think it does. I could see how curling the tip of your tongue is a little bit easier because you can feel the tip of your tongue curling. So you kind of know exactly where your tongue is as you're bringing it back. And you could see it too. So, right. Yeah.
Yes.
Right. Gotcha. All right. So you're saying that when you're making the R sound, you have two techniques that you can go with. But whichever technique you use, you want to keep in mind this BBT.
Back bunch tight every time.
Bunch tight. The key thing here is to make sure that your tongue is all the way to the back. It's bunched and it's very tight. And if you feel like the tightness around like your neck area, then I'm assuming you're doing it correctly.
You got it. That's exactly. It's very easy for this R to sound like a W. White. I hear that all day long. It's because your tongue is too loose, loosey-goosey. I always tell my students, tight, right.
Okay, yeah, so maybe we could go through some practices with the R and the L sound. So here, we maybe could just compare the two that we practiced in the beginning here. We have light with an L, and we have right with the R sound. So when the students are practicing these two different words, two different sounds, do you have any tips, tricks, advices aside from like the sounds that you have to work on every day?
Sit in front of a mirror. That's all I did when I was getting my master's degree. Sit in front of a mirror. I know it sounds silly and simple, but if you can see it and you can hear it, that is the most important part. As long as you can hear, oh, that was great, or, ooh, that sound not clear. That is what you're training your brain. You're training your mouth and your ears to say the sound correctly and hear it correctly.
Gotcha. Yeah. And I think that's like a step that a lot of people either skip or forget to do, is they forget to like look at themselves in the mirror, because you might think you're doing it a certain way in your mind at least. And then you look at yourself in the mirror and you realize your tongue is actually not in the location where it's supposed to be. But by actually seeing where your tongue is, it does help make that sound come out much more clear, right?
Also, if you have voice texting or an Alexa, anything like that, talk to it. See if it recognizes your voice and what you're trying to say correctly. I tell my English speaking students to do this all of the time, because if they can't understand you, chances are many other people can't as well.
Yeah. And lastly, before we finish up, what are your general thoughts on just working on one particular sound versus making sure that the words are used in the correct context?
That is such a big question, and it's a hard question to answer. But in conversation, we don't say race, right, wrong, read. No, I'm glad you know all those words. I'm so happy you know what they mean and how you can say them. Don't get caught up on just practicing single words. That's great when you're practicing as a beginner and you really want to help yourself. But as time goes on, move more towards conversation. It's more natural.
And that, reminds me of a student that I had that came into my school one time. And he was a pretty advanced student. I'd say I will put him like upper intermediate student. He could carry on a conversation. He's been studying English for 10 plus years. And he was in LA, working at one of the companies there. He came to the school and he looked pretty disappointed. So I said, hey, what's going on? Is everything okay? And he told me that he went to the restaurant and he tried to order water. And the waiter and the waitress, or the waiter or the waitress, couldn't understand what he was saying. So he kept saying water, water, water. And he was just trying to say that one word over and over and over again. And it confused the waiter even more. So he wanted to spend the entire hour just working on that water sound. And what I told him was exactly what you mentioned right now. We can sit here and work on this pronunciation, but in everyday conversation, we don't just say one word. We, put them into sentences or phrases so that the other person could understand. So what we did was instead of saying water, I gave him a phrase, a glass of water. And I told him, next time you go to a restaurant, if you add a glass of before water, I could almost guarantee you that every waiter in the United States is going to know that you want water. Because as Americans, we predict, right? If you hear a glass of, then there's only certain words that are going to follow the word glass of. And if the word water is close enough to its actual pronunciation, then the waiter will understand. So we spent about 10 minutes doing the water sound, and then afterwards I told him, when you order water, just don't say water. I would like a glass of water. And ever since, he had no problem ordering water. So I think it's very important to, of course, understand the sound and the pronunciation, but also be able to use that word in proper context so that the other person can understand what you're trying to say.
I'll share a personal story quickly. That is so funny you bring up the word water. I am from New Jersey, and if you've ever been to America, you might know people from New Jersey are different. We speak differently, we have different sounds, our vocabulary is very different. And when I went to college and graduate school out of state, I was not in New Jersey anymore, I was petrified because I didn't say my R's my entire life. I would say water, let's go walk the dog. Like, I had an accent, and I was so embarrassed because sometimes this accent is associated with like being young or being uneducated. And I am neither of those. Well, maybe young, but I am not uneducated. So I really had to think every day when I was speaking in class or I was speaking to new people, R, don't make your wa sound. And I still trip up sometimes, especially if I'm talking to my family who was born and raised here. It's really hard. So don't be like me. Say your water. Water.
Yeah, make sure you make that R sound. But that's funny though. And that's a really interesting point you bring up, because when you're talking about like American pronunciation, it sometimes gets grouped into like one way of pronouncing a word. But I always tell my students, America is a huge country, and depending on where you go, even within the same state, you have people speaking, with different accents and in different ways, where you can't just say that everybody speaks like this, So if one person may not understand your pronunciation, no big deal. Everybody's from different parts of, the country, and everybody speaks differently. And that's what makes, the United States unique, is that, there are people from so many different backgrounds. Well, I hope you guys found this video useful today. Just to kind of sum up our L and R sound for today, with the L sound, make sure you bring your tongue forward and touching the back of your tooth. It's nice and narrow, but never escaping the front of your tooth. No escapings.
No, thank you.
No escaping. Want to make sure it's touching the back of your teeth, and you can make that sound. With R, there's two ways of pronouncing it, but the acronyms you want to remember here is BBT, correct? Yeah. Back, bunched, and tight.
Yes.
There we go. Yeah. And whether you do the BBT, or you could also curl the tip of your tongue.
Just a little. Just a
little bit. And then sound as you want. All right, guys, I hope you guys found this video useful today. Don't forget, Kara offers amazing lessons on Cafe Talk. You can find all of her information in the description below, or go to cafetalk.com and find her there. Kara, thank you for an amazing lesson today.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, guys. Bye.